42 independent badge numbers. So 42 police to police a demonstration that started out with between 10 and 20 people, and which grew later on. So that's the second point. Overwhelming police presence. The third point is, as Sasha mentioned, my arrest took place when the police were approaching as a reaction to our asking for their badge numbers. They didn't give us their badge numbers. Obeying the law would be much too boring for police. Instead, they cornered a friend of ours who, as was mentioned, had previously had an undertaking to not go downtown. It's important to note that this had been overturned days and days before, and they made the claim that they had simply forgotten to enter it into their computer records, that she no longer had that undertaking. So that's bullshit, and that's another point to note. And then what happened was, I then stepped in and attempted to tell the police, please stop assaulting my friend, because they were grabbing this person, they were yelling at her, they were getting in her face. Again, the violence against women and the way that police violence is gendered is incredibly important to note here. And also it's important to note, this individual was the only woman of color that they arrested that evening. She was also the person who got the harshest undertaking. When she got out, she's not allowed to go anywhere downtown. She's not allowed to be here to talk to you. So you are being prevented from hearing the voice of the only woman of color who was arrested. That's another point. And then finally, when I did this, I did not touch any police officers. I know that would have accounted as assault PO. I did not stop them from asking any questions. I did not stop them from checking anybody's papers. I didn't stop them from doing anything that would have constituted a lawful investigation. And that's what obstruction of justice is. It's when you stop the police from investigating a crime. I didn't stop the police from investigating a crime. I've tried to stop the police from committing a crime. So hence I'm saying I'm charged with obstructing injustice. So after that, I was relatively quickly tackled to the ground, went into custody. I didn't come out with any broken arms. I didn't come out with any significant injuries, and that probably is because I'm a middle-class white guy. And that's an important thing to note, is that the differential treatment, all of the people who were injured were women, and the person who got the harshest conditions was a woman of color. That fits in with the fact that I started off this presentation with, that the police are not an institution that treats people equally. The police are an institution that enforces racial, class, and gendered power. That's the lesson that we need to take away from this. Anyway, I think that that's about it. And so once again, thank you for coming out, and thank you for listening to our stories.
Dayla as well.
Oh no, I meant that that's it for my presentation.
Hi. So I went down to the protest because we were planning on having a discussion about what sort of strategies we wanted to do, how we were going to react to the police escalation that occurred on Friday. When it began, we were about a group of 20. We were quietly talking to each other. We were taping our charter rights to our clothes. And a police officer, Ken Athens, number 1430, approached us, said that doing the things that we normally do would not be tolerated, like walking into the side of oncoming traffic or taking intersections. I've been involved in protests since I was 12. I've never received an order like this. I know that there's a lot of police violence in this neighborhood especially, but through my very privileged experience, this is pretty unprecedented what occurred. So what happened then is we saw that the perimeter had been surrounded by around 20 officers, so it was around a 1-to-1 ratio. We decided that what we would do then is to approach them and get their name and badge numbers. I volunteered to do this because I have legal observer training, and I figured that I'm fairly non-threatening. We approached the first officer, number 2223. He remained entirely silent when we asked for his name and badge number, and then he grabbed one of us, the woman of color who had had conditions that had been overturned, pulled her arms behind her back, and police swooped in around us and through us, pushing through, trying to separate us from her. Greg here was taken to the ground right in front of me, and there was a man who was just lying on the ground with him, holding his hand, and he was also arrested. And it was just phenomenally fast and phenomenally violent. The protesters were not making physical contact with them. You can see in the video footage that they're shouting and getting very close, but it was absolutely uncalled for, absolutely disproportionate. When we saw what was happening, I took down as many badge numbers as I could. Throughout the course of the day, I took down 42 different badge numbers. When we did decide that we were going to march, we hadn't even planned on marching initially. We didn't know what we were going to do. We were just chatting. To do jail solidarity, the numbers during the march were 27 protesters and 16 police officers. And I think it's important to note that there were 9 women amongst us and only 1 female officer. And that is important because throughout the course of the police interaction with us, it was only male police officers that were grabbing and pulling and pushing, even though, as has been noted, there was a huge focus on the female protesters. The same officer, 1430, who had given us the warning, I also saw pushing a woman down. She was the one that broke the wrist, as well as manhandling Sasha here. And he's fairly high ranking, so I was kind of surprised that he was getting his hands dirty. Other things that I was personally witness to were the woman of color was close to the door as Sasha was being pulled in. And if you go over there, you'll see that there's a concrete bin. She was pushed gut first onto the corner of that concrete bin. I was right next to her. I was freaking out while trying to take notes. She was still clenching her gut in pain while she was grabbed by the neck, and she was pulled by several officers through the door while she was shouting out, "Why am I being arrested? Why is she being arrested?" This was followed. I asked a police officer if it was customary to grab people by the neck, and he said he would not comment on police tactics. I did get quite a few comments from police officers as I was going around getting badge numbers and names where possible. One Sergeant McGinnis, he said that he was getting paid $100 an hour and that we were paying for his Hawaii trip. So I think it is extremely important to note that when you have a group of 27 at their largest, and most of the time we were smaller than that, protesters with no clear plans, mostly just wanting to chat to each other and then having to react to some of our group being taken away, that there were 42 police officers total. They were mostly just standing around when they weren't harassing us. And it was a lovely June evening, as Sasha noted before she was taken away. But there was, the police reaction was very strange to me. I think it's pretty unprecedented for this number of protesters, especially as most of us are, white middle class. This is something that I'm not used to. There was definitely a distinct attention on us, as Sasha noted, when there was an SUV that charged at her. And I saw that he backed up, sped forward, only stopped about a decimeter from her knees. There was absolutely no police reaction to that. He was treated as a victim of a spitting. Another thing to note is when the police officers had blocked off the road. They were letting through the occasional bus, but they had blockaded it for us. They stopped at 8:33, and I noted around. They all went away, and it was about 8:40 that they came out again and swooped in to grab Sasha away. So I don't know what their plan was there to just, I don't know what their excuse was. I really don't understand, but it's really disproportionate to what was occurring.
I just wanted to just quickly mention that, so the first march on Friday, Sergeant Ken Athens, who's the head of the BPD crowd control unit, approached me and some of them I've been organizing in Vancouver for a while, so he knew me by first name and said, "Hey, Lauren Gill, how's it going?" And I said, "I'm doing okay." And he said, "How was Montreal?" And I had just returned from Ottawa. I'd spent a day in Montreal as well, and I was there filming with independent media for around the student movement. He said, "My trip was fine. I was in Ottawa, but I only spent one day in Montreal." He said, "Yeah, I just got back from Montreal as well." And he began to explain how the BPD had sent him there for training specifically on how to essentially criminalize the student movement here in Vancouver and learn new tactics. I was really surprised that he had disclosed this to me. I later talked to a friend, David Wall, who was a reporter with Gravel, a number of other kind of independent media sources, and David called Lindsay Houghton, and who's the Vancouver media, she's the Vancouver Police Department spokesperson, so I'm sure you guys all know that. And Lindsay confirmed that Sergeant Athens had been sent there specifically for training around the student demonstrations, and I think that's really important to know. And also that this isn't necessarily the criminalization of dissent, it's the preliminary criminalization of dissent. They are trying to stop a movement before it even gets started. So I just wanted to, just make, and it's a Tyee article that was the statements in, and I think we sent it on the bottom of the press release just if you wanted it as a source.
There will be another Casseroles march on Wednesday at the Art Gallery. All this kind of activity and an attempt to squash our ability to come together, freely assemble, and express our charter rights, they're not going to be able to stop that. So we're going to show up. Who knows what's going to happen? I invite you all to come down to partake and to witness firsthand. We'll assemble for the peaceful protest, and that's it. And the story will continue, and you have an opportunity to observe and frame this narrative. And I encourage you all to come as human beings, not necessarily as reporters, to witness what's happening. And you have to tell your story within the context of how you have to tell stories, but come down as human beings. And,
what time on Wednesday?
It's at 8 o'clock at the Art Gallery.
And despite what happened to me this Wednesday, I will be there next Wednesday because I don't want to live in a Canada that's not a democratic country, and that means that I have the right to political expression. So I will be there. I hope many other people come and join us there to support the safety of people like myself. I hope you come to support our safety. And I will be there once again for the purpose of public engagement and education about fundamental freedoms and our charter rights here in Canada.
Thank you all very much for coming.
Oh, I just wanted to add one final anecdote. I was wearing one of the printouts that Sasha had made of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms on my back. And at one point later in the evening, after the 7 people had been arrested, a police cruiser drove by and slowed down, and out of the window a police officer yelled at me to let me know that I had a "kick me" sign on my back. As a joke, presumably. I thought it was rather fitting that the BPD considers the Charter of Rights and Freedoms a "kick me" sign.
Are you encouraging other people to do the same charter on the back?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I brought 25 copies of sections 1 and 2 of the charter with me to the demonstration at the Art Gallery, and we were encouraging people to wear their charter rights because that was or certainly, my focus that evening was about educating the public and people about our rights and about the violations and infringements that were occurring. But it's also up on YouTube. If you Google Vancouver Casserole, June 27th, there's one that's a 4-part, so it's labeled part 1, 2, 3, and 4.
It actually goes up to part 6 because it shows the police jamming Trevor Walber's head into the holding cell door as they arrested him and take him in.
There's
4 of
more
them.
now. And that shows the arrests at the Art Gallery and my arrests and the ones that followed in quite good detail. And you can also see things like me complying with police directives over and over, me begging pots and pans, and at occasions even kind of dancing rejoicing, protesting with other people, and then the injuries I came out with, those kinds of things are all pretty visible.
And you can thank our friend here from Vancouver Media Co-op for those YouTube videos.
Here's that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
If you're going to be asking police any questions, I recommend talking to Ken Athens and to Jay Harris, was 1633. Those were the two people that I saw pushing women down.
Yeah, I watched Jay Harris throw one of the women into that concrete.